And now I'm very excited to welcome back a great sports bettor, an awesome friend of this show, and Mr. Brian Edwards from Major Wager and Vegas Insider.com. You can follow Brian on X at Vegas B Edwards. Brian, welcome back to the show. The last time I talked to you, Florida was hoisting up the men's basketball national championship trophy. I assume you were hoisting up a few brews by the time I texted you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It had been 17 long, brutal years since I had tasted a natty, and it was delicious, delicious. And my college friends, I self dubbed myself Eddie Rings back in college. Eddie Rings is back in business.
Eddie Rings, there you go, my man. Well, hey, if you can make your own nickname, that's always works out better because sometimes you can get stuck with something you don't like. Well,
Right.
Eddie Rings, my man. You gotta remember, I picked Florida when I had you on the show before it started. I had them in my brackets and my survivor. The problem that happened to me was Houston screwed me in my survivor and my brackets, really, because they took Duke out, and I was all ready to pick Florida in one and Duke in the other. I had two survivors going, but because of the way it panned out with Houston, ended up killing Duke there. It took me out really for both situations. So I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. But at the same time, one has to wonder if Duke would have played Florida, what would have happened. I still think Florida probably would have won because just the way they choked those games away, it was a killer, and that was rough on them. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of things that happen when you choke games away, but the bottom line is you got to be mentally tough, and they weren't mentally tough, and Florida was. Florida came in and they took care of business, and they were just such a resilient team, Brian, and that's why I loved betting on them so much from mid-January on, man. It was just a good ride.
Yeah, man. It wasn't like when we came out of the SEC tournament, and all the metrics said the SEC, at least what they did in non-conference, was like the best conference in the Ken Palm era, like ever, or I'm sorry, in the Ken Palm era. And so when we dominated the SEC tournament, I thought we were going to dominate the NCAA tournament. It did not happen like that. Was not. It was not how I scripted it. I mean, we had to be the comeback kids in the round of 32 to UConn. Certainly the Elite Eight down by 7 with like 250, I think it was, and then
Yeah,
Auburn down 8.
so one of my dark horses, you were down 7-2. I believe it was Texas Tech, was it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Texas Tech in the Elite
yeah,
Eight,
yeah.
and then down 8 to Auburn at half, and then down nearly the entire game against Houston. So it wasn't how I scripted it, but we got it done. And by the way, Darion Williams was so good in that Texas Tech game, and Will Wade got him to go to NC State. And I tell you what, Will Wade's gonna if Hubert doesn't get UNC rolling again pretty soon or get that thing fixed quick, NC State's going to be the number 2 program in hoops in the ACC very fast under Will Wade.
Well, there you go. A little nugget for 3-4 months from now when we're switching a little bit to hoops. I love it. Well, that's great. But this is a football show, so we got to get back to football.
Sure.
And speaking of struggles, I might as well just jump to this one. When's the SEC going to catch up to the Big Ten in football, Brian? I'm just kind of curious if that's going to happen one of these years. I mean, it seems like the Big Ten kind of took that glory away.
Yeah. 2 straight natties, and Illinois beating South Carolina in the bowl game, and then Michigan's JV squad with like all of their best players opting out beat Alabama, had Alabama with more turnovers than total yards at one point late in the second quarter of that game. So yeah, um, Big Ten looking good here the last couple of years, and about time somebody shut the SEC up for a minute.
Just had to bust your balls. I know
Sure.
it's so like recent, and the SEC hasn't even been in the championship game in a couple years. But the truth is that the Ohio State's really been holding up the Big Ten for the most part. I know Michigan was good for a few years under Harbaugh, but man, without Ohio State, I feel like the Big Ten is just like the Big 12 or the ACC. It's nothing to really stare at. I do love the addition of Oregon, though. Holy cow, did that turn out really well from a football side of things. And that was a must gain for the Big Ten, in my opinion. So, but what's cool is, you got a very good SEC. The thing about the SEC is that they're deeper. Like their fifth best team is a hell of a lot better than our fifth best team, and I do admit that. At least right now, we'll see kind of how the cookie crumbles and everything when it comes to the season. But this is what we're here for, is the conference previews. But one big thing that happened between the Big Ten and the SEC was the UCLA and Tennessee quarterback swaps. Obviously lots of media coverage over what happened with Iamaleava, and now Joey Aguilar saying, "Sure, I'll go to Tennessee and take some of that money and have a chance at a NFL draft position." Who wins out in that deal this year? Who do you think performs better?
Well, talent-wise, UCLA wins out by a healthy margin. However, Nico's dad is a Chafe City headache. And it's kind of hard to get a gauge on if Nico is like that as well. I feel like most of it was his dad and the people that he had in his ear. I never really heard that he was like a bad teammate. But then when you like don't show up at spring game and you're not, you pretty much ghosted your teammates, which I'm sure he was told to do, etc.
Yeah.
But now at the same time, I don't think Nico had lived up to his 5-star billing and they had a great running game last year. They had a great defense. They did get to the playoff, but they did not have a super prolific passing game like you would have thought. But then you look at Aguilar now. He had a pretty good 2023, but last year he struggled. Only 55.9 completion percentage, 3,003 passing yards, 23-14 TDI&T ratio. Now, some of that might have been just the overall talent within the program was a lot less, and the program, which had been pretty dominant in the Sun Belt since coming up to the FBS, had started to slide a little bit. So maybe it wasn't all on him, and maybe he'll do well in Josh Heupel's offense. He'll definitely get coached better, and we'll see how it all turns out. But just from a talent perspective, UCLA wins. But now how it translates, wins and losses, etc. I mean, Nico's, the people talking to him are so dumb. I mean, he goes to a team now that completely struggled offensively and is rebuilding really in all facets of the program. And he doesn't have nearly the talent around him. So, he's making less money now. And, I can't imagine he'll impress NFL scouts more on this team than he would in Tennessee. I just think it was just a horrible, horrible move by him and his people, mostly his people. But yeah.
I agree. I think that you might think that UCLA got more from talent, but when you said he underachieved, I agree with that. And it's not like Joey Aguilar is a slouch. I think Aguilar, between the two, Aguilar is going to win out. And Josh Heupel's offense is going to give him a chance to perform well enough to be an NFL draft pick, while Iamaleava is now in position to take the blame for Foster and the coaches and UCLA performing in the Big Ten. And now I think he's in a terrible situation. I think this could be so bad that he might not even have an NFL future. He might not even have an NIL contract next year. I think it was a horrible decision. And I think his dad completely blew it and didn't think about the big picture here. It's like, you should have known that your kid underachieved last year. And the fact that you pissed him off and made that switch is It's gross. And just 5 years ago, we weren't paying athletes, and you're asking for college money. It's like there's only two things that can happen. You made a huge mistake, or you really think that he doesn't have an NFL chance. It's like
Right.
there's only two things
Right.
there.
Yeah, and UCLA is breaking in a new offensive coordinator, and he missed spring practice, so it's a tough situation for him.
It is. Well, let me ask you a little bit more about the SEC then. Should the SEC go to 9 conference games? All this talk about the playoffs and in teams that or conferences that should have a guaranteed amount of teams in these playoffs. I hate that, by the way. Even as a Big Ten fan, I don't like that. I say it still should be arbitrarily decided, maybe in a better way. But man, I feel like if the SEC is going to chirp about that, I personally think they should go 9 conference games, Brian.
Yeah, I've been saying I think they need to go 9 games for a while, and I do think that. However, it's becoming pretty clear that it's not going to happen, and the reason why is that um, you know these college towns cannot survive if they don't have their 7 home games. If they lose a Saturday of football, it's millions of dollars in revenue for the hotels, the restaurants, the bars. The Starkvilles of the world, the Auburn, Alabamas of the world. Not so much like Lexington and Baton Rouge and Knoxville. Those are big cities, but Gainesville, Columbia, South Carolina, they have to. And like Florida and Georgia have a neutral site game, okay. And if they go 9 games, it'll be, 1 year you'll have 4 at home and 5 on the road. Or maybe with Florida and Georgia, it'll be 4-4-1. And then you've got Kentucky has to play their in-state rivalry. Louisville, Clemson has to play South Carolina. Florida has to play Florida State, and those are home and home always. And so basically, if you did that, a lot of SEC schools every other year might have one less home game, and that's millions of dollars that their economies cannot handle. So that's the reasoning for it. And fans of other conferences can say BS excuse, whatever. I'm just telling you that that's why it's happening. And I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to 8. Certainly not anytime soon. It doesn't look like.
Going to 9.
That's what I meant. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you have to get rid of in-state rivals, or maybe just be happy that 4 teams are going to the playoffs. Then make more incentive to make the playoffs, because that means you still have another chance at a home game if you're one of those, 5 through 8s or whatever it is. And there's more revenue to be made if you think you're as good as you are. So it's an interesting calculated risk. So I agree with your first statement, what you've been saying. They should go 9 conference games and figure it out. And local businesses, everyone's got to adjust to different times and different things. If you're relying so much on that as it is, I think that's a little bit of a problem. No, it's I agree. I think all the conferences should be, if you're going to start saying we need this many teams in, you have to start doing it like other conferences do it. And I think that's important as well. Preview time, my man. SEC, baby. And, I don't know if it's so funny. It's like there's 3 teams that are usually in the top, as we know. There's Georgia, Alabama, and I guess Texas now. Maybe LSU's kind of creeping up a little bit. Let's start with kind of the team that's just been winning it more lately in Georgia. This is a team that obviously lost their quarterback, and everyone thought that quarterback was going to be a draft pick instead of transferring to Miami. So they're under interesting circumstances here, but it's Georgia and it's Kirby Smart, and they have been great every year, and the recruiting has been top notch. What kind of preview do you think Georgia has with their season win total, which is obviously always very high, in Georgia? What is it at 10 right now? I'll pull it up as you start.
So FanDuel's got it today 9.5 over -148. The under is plus 120. You look at their games of the year, they're -5.5 at Tennessee in week 3. They're -4 in week 5 at home to Alabama. But I'll point out that Alabama is 9-1 in the last 10 against Georgia. Now, not many of those have been in Athens, but I'll also point out Alabama has not lost a game in the state of Georgia since Tim Tebow beat them at the Georgia Dome in 2008. So, but anyway, those are just a couple of tidbits. But Georgia's favored by 4 in that one. They're minus 7.5 at Auburn, October 11th. But I like Auburn plus the 7.5 in that game, and possibly in an upset. Coulda, woulda, shoulda had them 2 years ago. And that's a tough spot for Georgia, because Auburn has 2 weeks to prepare for that game, whereas Georgia, after it hosts Alabama, it hosts Kentucky, then it goes to Auburn, and Georgia's minus 9.5 to Florida. But as many will remember, when DJ Lagway got hurt last year against Georgia, Florida had a 7-point lead and the ball when he was still in the game. And Lagway ended up going 6-1 as the starter, and that was his only loss when he left with a 7-point lead. They are minus 2 at home to Texas and minus 12.5 at Georgia Tech, not at Bobby Dodd. They're going to play that game at Mercedes-Benz, where the Falcons play this year. But number 2 overall recruiting class, number 23 transfer specific. They added, they got 5 5-star incoming freshmen and 18 4-stars. Or out of incoming freshmen, it's actually 15 4-stars, because 3 of their 18 4-stars are transfers. But I look at the schedule now. It's good for them that their toughest games are at home. That being Alabama and Texas, the 2 toughest. And Ole Miss at home also is a good thing. But I marked them initially 7-0 with 5 swing games. Now I'll be clear; they're favored in all 5 of these swing games. But more so than swing games, I should just say losable. I mean, I think they're going to win at Tennessee, but that's one of the swing games where they're 5.5-point favorites. So I'll say 8-0 with that one. I lean their way against Alabama, but man, Alabama has just had. I mean, I've been saying for more than a decade, that Georgia's Alabama's bitch, and even though Georgia got 2 natties, that has not changed yet. Maybe it changes on September 27th. So that one's a true swing game. I really like Auburn's chances. Auburn's going to be really improved, and if they can get good quarterback play, watch out for Auburn. And when I say that, I don't feel like Jackson Arnold's got to live up to his 5-star billing coming out of high school to Oklahoma. But Auburn's roster is so improved. If he just plays like a pretty good SEC quarterback, then they're going to be really good. So out of Alabama and Auburn, let's just say they split. Let's just say they split those. So that would leave them 8-1 with 3 more swing games. The one at Florida, which I think is very losable, I'll say they win against Texas, but I'll also point out Texas has got 2 weeks to prepare for that one, whereas Georgia's at Mississippi State the week before. And we saw what Georgia Tech, I'm high on this Georgia Tech team. So I'm thinking 10-2 for Georgia. I don't know where they're going to lose, whether it's Florida, Texas, or Georgia Tech, but I think they'll lose one more. So I'm going to say 10-2 on the Dogs.
Was Carson Beck hurt for the Texas game, or did
Nope.
he get? Okay, so
no,
he got hurt in the Texas game, right?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Last play of the first half. I was thinking the regular season. Texas
Okay.
Game.
And Gunnar Stockton came. I agree, because I am not super high on Gunnar Stockton. I think of all the top teams in the college football, he's kind of one of the lower ones. He looks like he's got good legs, but man, I don't think he's got the arm that's going to take and the decision making yet. And this could really, choke up Georgia, even though they get tons of skill. Obviously, the quarterback is going to rule in this situation. So I find that interesting. I think I'm not going to take under 9.5 wins at plus money. I think they can definitely win 10, but I think the number's right. And so we'll stick with that one. I agree with you on that. Why don't we go right to Auburn's, because you talked about them already quite a bit with Jackson Arnold transferring in. What do we get out of this Auburn team that's got, I guess looking up, because last year they finished halfway decent. They won 2 of their last 3 games. A lot of people are liking Auburn now.
Yeah, so they had the number 6 overall recruiting class in the country. They got 5-star, 23, 4-star guys that are coming in, and they've gone 1-3 in uh, one possession games in each of Freeze's first 2 years. So they've lost some close ones. They've been close, just not quite close enough. And look, I think that it's going to be a significant, well, I don't want to say significant upgrade because, I mean, Jackson Arnold did lose his job last year in September at Oklahoma. But the transfer specific class for Auburn is ranked number 8. And not only do they have 2 very good true sophomore receivers that were outstanding as true freshmen last year, Cam Coleman, 37 catches, 598 yards, 8 touchdowns, and Malcolm Simmons, 40 catches, 451 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So those 2 guys are ready to be stars. And then Eric Singleton, coming over from Georgia Tech, is a 4-star transfer wide receiver. And they also got another really good transfer receiver from from Wake Forest, Horatio Fields, who's also a 4-star transfer. And Auburn has 6 starters back on a defense that was pretty good last year. Gave up 21.3 points per game. Now, you know, how is Freeze going to do as a head coach? I mean, he certainly has seemingly lost a little bit of his mojo after he really had it rolling at Ole Miss there for a while. I mean, I know he had a solid run at Liberty, but so far at Auburn, 11-14, and there is no doubt about it. He is on the hot seat, and he better come up with 8 or 9 wins this year. So they've got a lot of swing games. I mean, I marked them 5-0 with 6 swing games. I mean, the Baylor game is a legit danger game at
Yeah.
Baylor. Baylor's going to be good this year. At Oklahoma, I mean, Oklahoma beat them on the Plains last year. That's a tough one. At A&M the next week, you got to fly to Oklahoma, back home, and then fly to A&M again. And A&M is off an open date, so that's a rest advantage for A&M. I mean, if they go 1-1 out of at Oklahoma and at Texas A&M, that'll be good. And so don't lose to Baylor. I mean, you got 3 road games in the month of September, but then you get an advantageous spot with Georgia with 2 weeks to prepare. Then you get Missouri at home. I think they win that. At Arkansas, they probably win that. The back side of the schedule, it really lightens up. Then you get a down Kentucky team at home. At Vandy, now we can talk about that more as we get into the Vandy conversation because Diego Pavia is Hugh Freeze's daddy. Now Auburn will have the better roster, but he's 0-3 against Pavia, and he's lost by double digits all 3 times. And then you get Mercer at home. I think they're going to knock off Bama. If I had a DraftKings account, I would bet Auburn plus 7.5 to Bama right now, and I would bet them plus 7.5 at home to Georgia as well. So those are 2 games of the year that I would like. Their win total is 7.5, over minus 160, under plus 130. I would lean over, but I haven't bet it.
Yeah, it's at Oklahoma is so interesting because of the Jackson Arnold revenge situation here, right? I agree that there's so many coin flips on this schedule, and I actually kind of like Baylor even that first week a little bit. I don't know what to expect from this Auburn team. I know that Hughes Freeze, like you said, should be on the hot seat, but they do have Cam Coleman there at wide receiver. You have Alston at running back there, Damari Alston, that should be pretty good. I hear their defense is supposed to take a big step up. So, that's the big question with DJ Durkin. Can he get those guys rolling and stop some of these higher powered teams? I think I'm going to like Auburn a lot as an ATS team, like you mentioned. I'm not sure if I'm going to mess with this 7.5 point season win total to the over. It's minus 160 with all those coin flips that can go really either way. And I think it's probably a pretty good number. Let's move to Bama then, obviously the other team in the Iron Bowl here. And interesting, I would call the first season a failure. for them because they did not make the playoffs. And when you have 12 freaking teams in the playoffs, that is a massive check against Kalen DeBoer. And this man has a lot to live up to with Nick Saban, as obviously who he replaced. And, it's different. This ain't the West Coast. This is the SEC here. And, defenses can figure your schemes out here. And I wonder if he's got the kind of stones it takes to be a head coach in the SEC. I'm not sure yet. I really like Kalen DeBoer. Don't get me wrong. When the hire happened, I liked it. But is Ty Simpson going to be good? I didn't like Jalen Milroe last year. I thought he was a overrated player. I think he shouldn't have been drafted. Who did I call him? I called him remember Anthony Richardson's a poor man's Cam Newton. I call him a poor man's Anthony Richardson. Is what I call him, Jalen Milroe. So I think Ty Simpson could be an upgrade here. And Bama still with all the talent. If they can put it together, this could be a really great team. So what are your thoughts on the Crimson Tide?
Well, the hope in Tuscaloosa is that Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator, who initially came with DeBoer from Washington, but a week or two later left Tuscaloosa when he got the Seahawks OC job, but he got fired after 1 year in the NFL, and he's their OC. The hope is that he was kind of the magic potion that was missing from their offense last year, but I've got a lot of question marks. In fact, really the only bet that I'm going to make or that I would make if I had, access to these games of the year that I would make right now is I would actually fade Alabama with LSU plus 6.5 at Bama November 8th. And I would fade them with Auburn plus 7.5 at Auburn November 29th. Win total 9.5 at FanDuel, under minus 114, over minus 106. Until I see it from Simpson, I need to see it. I know he's talented. I know he was highly regarded coming out of high school. So was the Austin Mack kid who was initially signed with DeBoer at Washington, but transferred over and redshirted last year. Now, the overall talent is still really good. And after what I considered a disappointing season for Bama, that was really kind of going off the rails there at the end. I mean, you lose to a bad Oklahoma team in a game you had to win to get to the CFP. You lose by 21. And then I mentioned the the Michigan game where Michigan had way more opt-outs than Alabama. But look, what he did do, I mean, look, everybody is going to lose guys to the portal these days, but it could have been a lot worse. And I think that shows that maybe it wasn't going off the rails as bad as it seemed to be, in that, not as many people bailed on the program that, you might have thought. I marked them schedule-wise 7-1 with 4 swing games. I've got them losing at Auburn, even though they are a 7.5-point favorite. The other swing games being at Georgia, at Missouri, when it's a better spot for Missouri. Missouri has 2 weeks to prepare. Alabama, after they play at Georgia, they get Vanderbilt at home, and then at Missouri. So, I mean, I'll call that a win for Bama, but, it's not a layup. And then at South Carolina is going to be a tough one. They're favored by 7.5. I actually lean South Carolina on that one. I mean, I think that's a legit swing game. And then LSU at home, I think, is a legit swing game. So, again, 7-1, 4 swing games, but I'll call the game at Missouri a win. So, really 8-1 with 3 swing games. But those 3 swing games, in my mind, are legit swing games.
What's really weird is that I don't see Alabama with a returning production rank of 26 too often. Our 29, Bill Conley's latest post-spring returning production rankings. That's amazing for a team that recruits like them, because they're usually, in the 70s through 100s, and they reload. Right. But now you can reload, and you got great kids. I wish I knew how well Ty Simpson was going to be. What's funny, I see 1 loss against Wisconsin. Oh no, that's a win against Wisconsin.
Sorry.
I wish it would be lost, but it's such a weird situation because it's at Georgia after that. people are going to think, look ahead. No, they'll smoke Wisconsin. And then at Georgia's tough. But what's weird is you got Vanderbilt afterwards. Say they win at Georgia, people are going to be like, oh, letdown spot. This ain't no letdown spot against Vanderbilt, my man. This is going to be a freaking pedal to the metal game and a revenge spot from last year's debacle against Vanderbilt. And I'm going to be all over Alabama. But then I'll be on Missouri the next week. So I do agree with you. I circled that. As far as a win total is concerned, what's the hype on South Carolina? Quite high. I think the hype on LSU is quite high. That's kind of a swing game. That Auburn's going to say if they go over 9.5 or not. Yeah, I think, right?
You think it'll be 9-2? You think it'll be 9-2 going to Auburn?
I do. I think 9-2 or even 10-1, but I think 9-2 most likely. And they'll still be in position for the college football playoff, which is good for them. But this day and age, you don't have to win 11 games to get in the college football playoff. But I think Bama is going to be a motivated team, so I kind of like them, and I would lean over their 9.5 season win total number. Let's move to, why don't we do Florida? That's your team, and they obviously have a lot to live up to. I know you haven't been a Billy Napier fan over the years. I wonder if the sentiment is still there.
Well, he has been his tenure's been a colossal disaster from the start until November of last year, and then after losing the Texas game 49-17 when they were starting a third string walk-on quarterback, then they caught fire, and for the first time in 4 years, or really going back to 2019. We finally played some good defense. We held LSU to 16. We held Ole Miss to 17. We intercepted Jackson Dart 3 times. Then they win at FSU 31-11. And, they beat Tulane 33-8, but Tulane was on a third string quarterback and had a lot of the coach had left. The guys hit the portal, et cetera. I'm sorry, the coach did not leave. What am I talking about? John Summerall did not leave. But anywho, I think not because of Napier's coaching, but just finally he's amassed a pretty good set of talent, which is, an example of that is Phil Steele's national unit rankings. They are in the top 18 in every position group except for one, and that's linebacker. I'll rip through them real quick. Quarterback number 10, which I think it should be higher. Number 14 running back, 18 receiver, number 5 O-line, number 10 D-line, 25 linebacker, number 10 in the secondary, number 13 on special teams. They get Eugene Wilson back, who led them in receiving yards as a freshman in 2023, but he was a season-ending injury in September of last year. They've got 2 5-star incoming receivers. Dallas Wilson had 3 touchdown catches in the spring game. Both 5-star incoming freshmen were in for spring early. Jaden Baugh really came on as a true freshman running back, ended up leading the Gators in rushing with 673 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 5.1 yards per carry average. Lagway, his stats were not spectacular. And, he did make some freshman mistakes at times. He had a couple of terrible interceptions against Tulane that were just really bad reads. But he showed like elite NFL arm talent in the wins over LSU and Ole Miss. When I should add, he wasn't really 100%. He had that injury against Georgia, and then the next week he sat out against Texas. But it was 2 weeks later he was back in there against LSU. So he showed toughness, playing hurt, and playing well in those 2 games that really saved Napier's job. And look, like I said, Phil Steele's got the O-line at number 5. Jake Slaughter's first team preseason All-American, the center at most in most publications. I think the backfield's loaded with young talent. A lot's going to be on. I wish the one thing to quibble with in the offseason is that he only brought one receiver in from the portal. Is J. Michael Sturdivant from UCLA, who's kind of had an up and down career, but I think he's got NFL talent, but I would have thought that with a player like Lagway, that we could have gone and got like two of the top a half dozen receivers that hit the portal. But apparently Napier was happy with what he had, and I guess he's, I think he's thinking this Dallas Wilson, true freshman, is going to be a star from day one, and so I'm hoping he's right on that. The schedule. Or season win total 7.5, under -144, over +118. I like it to go over. I think they're going to go 9-3. I initially marked them 7-1 with 4 swing games. The 4 swing games, or let's see, the loss I had. Well, I think they're going to split a pair of road games, out of at LSU week 3 and at Miami in week 4. So one of the losses will be there. I think probably at LSU. And then I also think they'll split out of a 2-game stretch, Texas at home, where the Gators have an open date and Texas doesn't. But they have. I'm sorry. Check that. Texas does have. They both have an open date. My apologies. Texas is 7.5-point favorite at DraftKings in games of the year, and then Florida's at A&M. So, in other words, I think they split those because I think if Florida upsets Texas, I think they'll be ripe for a letdown at A&M. But if they lose at home to Texas, I think they'll go win at A&M. And Lagway grew up really close to College Station, so that'll be a homecoming game of sorts for him. And so then, Georgia, I like the Gators plus 9.5 in that game. They can definitely win that game. And then out of at Ole Miss and Tennessee at home, they may win both of those if Lagway is healthy. But the game of the year that I really love, I absolutely love Florida -2.5 to Tennessee at DraftKings. So since 1971, Tennessee has won twice in Gainesville, both when Casey Clausen was the quarterback in 01 and 03. In the last 20 head-to-head meetings between Florida and Tennessee, Florida's 17-3 straight up and 15-5 ATS. And they should have won all 20 of those games. The 3 losses were absolute heartbreakers, including last year's OT loss. And, with Florida only being -2.5 at home, that tells you that DraftKings odds makers have Tennessee with a higher power rating than Florida. And I disagree with that as well. So Florida -2.5, that's my favorite games of the year line that's out there. But I also like Florida a lot, plus 5.5 to Miami and plus 9.5 to Georgia. Now, anytime you bet an over, which I am recommending over 7.5 plus 118, obviously your biggest concern is your quarterback staying healthy. So there is that. I'm not against plus, I think I saw plus 430 at FanDuel for the Gators to make the CFP, because if one of your 9 wins comes against Georgia or Texas, and those teams have big seasons, I think 9-3 might get them in. Maybe we'll see.
Okay, I like what you said, and now I was going to get to make the playoffs because 6.5 juice to the over is what it's at, which means 7. Really, these books aren't doing whole numbers. DraftKings and FanDuel don't. No, I think that if Lagway really is what he was at the end of last year, this could be a great team. What's interesting, they're also pretty high in returning production, ranking 30th there. Their offensive line is really intact from last year, including tight end Hayden Hansen. This is a Florida team that I want to be on as well. I think that the Tennessee game, by then you're probably going to get a larger spread because I kind of expect Florida to be a little bit better than them this year. So if you want to bet it early, you can get 2.5 now is what you said. I think later, if you wait and if we're right about Florida, they're going to be a 3.5 to 5 point spread against Tennessee. What you said about Texas A&M is interesting too. We'll get to Texas A&M soon. I am wondering, I think what's going to tell me is at LSU, what kind of team this really is. And that's interesting. I'd rather bet them plus 340 to make the playoffs because they can possibly do it with 8 to 9 wins. The 8-win thing is interesting because they have the number one, again, hardest schedule in college football, man. And boy, does that suck to get that constantly. But at the same time, my Badgers are ranked number 3, so I feel you there. But man, it is. I think that maybe they look at that and they could make the playoffs. And why would I lay minus 170 over 6.5 if I can just get to 8 wins? The math's not that far off, but 9 wins are probably in the playoffs, and there's 9 winnable games here, in my opinion. So, Florida State's garbage. I think they'll finish at home.
One thing I'll say about the schedule, and it is, it's definitely hard again. But if you look at everybody outside of LSU, I mean, I know USF's got its quarterback coming back, but basically everybody's got a new quarterback, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
everybody but LSU, it seems, was Kentucky. Let's see what
Kentucky's going to Calzada.
Yeah, Zach Calzada, who's back again from the FCS, and Missouri lost theirs, and Cook, and Ole Miss obviously lost theirs to the NFL. Yeah, man. Texas has obviously Mark Manning going. Vanderbilt, I guess you can talk about Paiva.
We don't play them. We don't play.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So you play all these teams with new quarterbacks. That's fantastic. So it's a situation that looks good for Florida for sure. Let's move to LSU then, because they're a pretty highly thought out team. LSU, obviously Nussmeier is back, and they finished pretty strong. It's the whole thing about Kelly. A lot of love him or hate him. I feel like everybody either hates him or likes him. There's nothing in the middle with Brian Kelly there. I will say that LSU did lose a ton of people to the draft and to obviously retirement, whatever, moving on to the next level. LSU always strong in the transfer portal, though, ranking number 2 on 3 net portal rankings. I like looking at the on 3 stuff. The fact that LSU is in this whole SEC, it really throws me off from wanting to make a lot of bets, man, because to be honest with you, I mean, I can make cases for 6 to 8 teams here, Brian. What are your thoughts on the Tigers?
I'm real high on them. I'm very high on them, and that's like one of the few SEC teams I've not written down the season win total. So I'm not sure on it. But they've got the number 1 transfer specific class coming in. They added all sorts of talent. They went heavy on NIL. They I don't know that they spent as much as Ohio State spent last year, but they spent a lot. They got Barryon Brown, a 4-star transfer from Kentucky, who's probably the best return guy in the country, and a really solid receiver with 25 starts. Nick Anderson, who was a talented receiver at Oklahoma, but was injured most of last year. They're going to be really good at receiver. They really found their new running back of the future in Caden Durham, who was outstanding as a true freshman last year, 5.4 yards per carry. There are some people out there that think Nussmeier could be the number 1, pick in the draft next year. I'm not there, but I do think he's a very high quality SEC quarterback. They're good on now. I will say they're not going to be as good on the O line. They don't have those 2 stud offensive tackles, but Harold Perkins is back, and he would have gone pro, but he had that season-ending injury, so that's a big-time playmaker. Whit Weeks, their leading tackler last year, 125 tackles, and he also had 10 TFLs. He's back. They're going to be very, very good. You look at the schedule at Clemson. Who knows? True swing game. I think they win their next 3, although Florida won't be easy. And at Ole Miss is a true swing game. I think they'll beat South Carolina at home. Now, at Vandy, that might be tough. Vandy's got 2 weeks to prepare, and LSU doesn't. I think they beat A&M at home. They're a 6.5-point dog at Alabama. I like them catching the points there. That's a game they can win. They should beat Arkansas at home in Western Kentucky, and we'll see at Oklahoma. But I'm thinking, 9-3 or 10-2, and he better go. If he doesn't go 10-2, don't get blown out any. 9-3 might not be enough for him to retain his job because they went all out on NIL. You've got one of the better quarterbacks in the country, and yeah, I mean, LSU fans have monster expectations for this year. He overachieved in year one when he won the SEC West. In year two, if his defense was not as bad as it was, if they had anywhere near just an average defense for LSU compared to what it had been the 15 previous seasons, they easily win the national title 2 years ago. That epic Jaden Daniels offense with Malik Neighbors, with Brian Thomas Jr., et cetera, only because they had an awful defense, one of their worst in 15 to 20 years. That's why they didn't make the playoff, and they should have won the national title that year.
Geez, man, the talent that this team wasted at receiver, man, over the years. Now, at least they did get one with Joe Burrow and obviously Jamar Chase and Jefferson. But this is an LSU team that's interesting to me, but yet hard to figure out, because one thing I will say is that last year I kind of felt that they beat up on the bad teams. And just when they stepped up against Bama, lost at home by 20-some points. They lose at A&M by over 15 points, exactly 15 points. They lose at Florida by 9 points. It's like they had a doable schedule. At South Carolina was a nice win, but it was their first SEC game back in September 14th. Yeah, I love the transfers they got in. Brian Kelly's on the hot seat. The market seems to think it's a smidge under 8.5. As you can see, it's 8.5 juice to the over -140. So it's a smidge under 9 is what I'm trying to say for the season win total, but more like a 8.8 type situation here, right? So, and it's this damn LSU team that throws me off, from firing on this team's going to make the playoffs. This team's going to make the playoffs. This team's going over. I'm struggling to figure them out a little bit myself, but maybe we can go to Texas A&M here in College Station. And what are your thoughts on this A&M team? They're always, ever since Jimbo Fisher's been there, they've been overhyped. But man, I almost feel like that's settled down a little bit here. You got a quarterback in Marcel Reed is back, and their season win total is probably sitting here. I think Texas is a good distraction for them because Texas's season win total is always high, and we'll get to Texas in a minute. Over 8.5 plus 125 for Texas A&M, which is, that's getting closer to 8 in my opinion. What are your thoughts on the Aggies?
And FanDuel's got it at 7.5, but heavily juiced to the over -160. So I think they're going to be good. But is Marcel Reed, is he really, we'll see. I know he was a true freshman last year, and for a true freshman, he wasn't bad at all. He ran for net, even with the sack yardage, 543 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4.7 yards per carry average, and he had a decent 15-6 TD-INT ratio. I just don't know that. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback in the SEC. We'll see. I think they start 2-1, losing at Notre Dame, going into their open date, and Notre Dame gets 2 weeks to prepare for that one, and A&M doesn't. I think they beat Auburn probably at home, although initially marked it a swing game. I think they'll be 4-1 with Florida coming to town, and that's a true swing game. They probably win at Arkansas to go to 5-1 or 5-1, and I'll just not grade the Florida game yet. I think they'll lose at LSU to go to 5-2. At Missouri, true swing game. South Carolina at home. Now South Carolina's got 2 weeks to prepare for that one, but I think A&M will be a little bit of a favorite. I'll call that a win, 6-2. I'll call Samford a win, 7-2. I think they lose at Texas. That's 7-3 with the 2 swing games being at Missouri and Florida at home. And I think the swing games will determine what they do win total wise. But I think they're probably a 7-5, 8-4 type of team.
Yeah, and plus 245 to make the playoffs, so they're higher than Florida, or worse of a number, right? I'd rather bet Florida to make the playoffs. I think at South Carolina could be a loss, actually, in my opinion.
No, it's
I'm
at
not.
home. It's at home to South Carolina.
Is it at home? Okay, I was.
And hey, I would call it a loss at South Carolina too. I called it a win because it was in College Station.
It's still a coin flip, though,
Yeah,
and
no, I
it's
agree.
and they have Sanford in between Texas. Texas is probably a loss unless Texas completely pulls a Texas. It's another weird schedule, and at Notre Dame makes things much more interesting for them. They need to get that revenge game win at Notre Dame nice and early for them to kind of take off here. So I don't have a huge opinion on A&M myself. They've always had that good defensive line. They rank 11th in the transfer portal for their rankings. They're semi-high in returning production, for an SEC team, I should say. So I'm going to stay neutral on them. But let's go to Texas then, because, this is the most hyped team with Arch Manning now finally getting the nod here. I feel like maybe he should have got last year a little bit. Quinn Ewers was just an interesting situation. I feel like in college, you just need more legs, and I think Quinn Ewers was a good passer, and man, they need that big touchdown to pass up Arizona State. Otherwise, they would have been bounced out of the playoffs that year. The hype's always high on Texas, man, but I don't know. I don't know if I can get there. This is just another one of those SEC teams that wouldn't surprise me if they go 9-3 and their numbers 9.5 juice to the over, Brian.
Yeah, heavy juice to the over. Minus 196 is what I saw at FanDuel. So that makes it impossible. I mean, that makes it a hard pass for me, unless I like the under, but I don't like the under. Number 1 overall recruiting class, number 25 transfer specific. They got five 5-star true freshmen coming in. And they also got 4 4-star transfers. I marked them 9-0 with 3 swing games. Or actually, let me backtrack before I go into the schedule. I just don't think. I feel like a lot of people are just anointing Arch as like the best quarterback in the SEC and maybe the best quarterback in the country. And until I see it, I'm nowhere near that. Nowhere near it. I got to see it, and I got to see it with a little bit of consistency. What he did last year. He looked good at times coming in, but I mean, I got to. What was the game? Didn't he start? Was there one game he started? Oh no, he started 2 games. Was Mississippi State one of them? Because I can't remember which ones they were.
I remember he started a game and it was kind of rocky a little bit in the first quarter last year.
I think it was Mississippi State because they were only up by 3 at halftime as a 34.5-point favorite.
That sounds right. They wanted to give viewers a rest after the Kentucky game, and I think it was Mississippi State. And I'll have to double check that. But
right.
while you talk, I'll double check that.
Yeah. So anywho, I mean, look, they're the amount of talent in the program is top 5, if not top 3. And Sark has really he's really come into his own as a head coach. So I mean, it's all optimism and high expectations, and understandably so. But you got to play at Ohio State to start the year. I marked Texas 9-0 with 3 swing games. Those swing games being at Ohio State, at Florida, where again they're a 7.5-point road favorite, and at Georgia, where they're a 2.5-point underdog. I mean, the schedule. I mean, you get Arkansas and Vandy at home. You get to play at Kentucky and at Mississippi State. In other words, their SEC schedule is so much easier last year and this year compared to Oklahoma, the team that came in with them, and really just compared to everybody else in the conference. I mean, most people have Kentucky and Mississippi State is the two worst teams in the SEC, and you get to play both of them on the road, which is a good thing when they're down. Is to play them on the road, and then you get to play Vandy and Arkansas at home, and they're probably the two teams that are fighting for whoever's 13th or 14th in the league, and you get both of them at home. So that's four, quote unquote easy SEC games. So, and then you get A&M at home, and now you do have to play at Georgia and at Florida and at Ohio State. So I'm not saying the schedule's easy, but
Home against Georgia, it says here. So they get home.
No, they're at Georgia.
Okay, I see. They must have written this wrong in good old Athlon, so I'll be texting them. No, it's interesting.
Remember, they played in Austin last year.
Yeah, they did play in Austin. Says
against
at
Georgia.
Funny, it says at Georgia here. Huh? Weird.
Oh, it is at Georgia. I thought you said it's at Georgia.
Okay. So let's. I mean, here's the thing. Arch Manning, I agree, is overhyped, but you're right. The schedule, it's just Bama, Georgia, and all the lower teams. You avoid like the A&Ms, and I guess Florida may be better than you think, so we'll go with that. But you avoid LSU, you avoid A&M, you avoid Ole Miss, and I don't know how good Missouri's going to be, but I think that's huge. Oklahoma has just not been living up to what they have been. They're not playing Auburn, who's supposed to be better, right? So I do agree with you. Here's the thing. Arch Manning played against Mississippi State, but he went 26 for 31, 325 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So it started off rocky, and he kind of got his feet wet. But Mississippi State was coming in like, nothing to lose. They're toast, right? But they came in like, let's go mess this kid up, and they did a pretty good job, the first half. But he only really played against Monroe and then Mississippi State, and came in for a few plays against Georgia after Quinn Ewers was terrible. He came in the fourth quarter against Georgia. So yeah, man, Archie Manning, he's definitely the most hyped quarterback. But one thing I do like about guys that come in from these bloodlines is that they usually step up to expectations. I think that he's going to step up to the expectations. Not saying that I'm going to bet him for Heisman at that terrible number, but man, I expect him to do good. So, and that's why we're not taking the season win total under, right, Brian?
Right. Well, no, that's one that's definite pass for me on Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, sounds good. Let's move on to Ole Miss. And we're kind of short on time. Let's just kind of blow through the rest of these teams. Ole Miss and South Carolina, let's spend a little extra on. But what are your thoughts on Ole Miss and their prospectus with all the talent that they lost last year?
So FanDuel's got them 8.5 over -170, under +138. Kiffin didn't quite kill it in the portal as much as he has, but he still got, I believe it was the number 4 transfer specific class according to 247 Sports Composite. But they only returned 18 lettermen. They lost 35 lettermen. I mean, last year was the season that it was their year to really, get it done, and they didn't quite get it done. And now I think Austin Simmons is going to be really good. Now he only played at garbage time, except for when Dart got hurt in the first quarter against Georgia, and he came in and looked pretty sharp. I want to say he was either 5 of 6 or 6 of 7. I think he led him to I want to say 2 field goal drives, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, I think Simmons is going to be good. But, he is, getting his first significant playing time. They're not going to be nearly as good as last year, certainly not on the D line. But this is a talented team for sure. And I think Kiffin's play calling is elite. You look at I marked them 7-1 with 4 swing games. I have them losing the for sure at Georgia revenge game for the Bulldogs. I think they start 4-0. The LSU game at home is a swing game. They're favored by 2.5 in games of the year at DraftKings. The game at Oklahoma is a swing game. I would lean toward Oklahoma winning that one. I think the game at home to South Carolina is a swing game, and the game at home to Florida is a swing game. So 7-4 with 4 swing games, but at least they get 3 of those 4 swing games at home. That being LSU, South Carolina, and Florida. So I think they're probably an 8-4, maybe a 9-3 team.
They're the same season win total, 8.5 juice to the over -140 as LSU. So that's interesting. And they have like you said, easy schedule. They get LSU at home as their first real challenge because I don't think Arkansas is any good and Kentucky is not as good. They get a Washington State. At Georgia is really their toughest game. I think at Oklahoma is kind of swingy, like you said. Dude, this is a super easy schedule, which throws off the whole playoff thing again. It's like maybe the SEC will get 5 teams in the playoffs this year because I think you're not the rule is you're allowed to go over 4, right? I don't know too much about that, but that's highly possible. So just schedule wise, this Ole Miss, even though they lost a ton of players to the pros and their quarterback could reload pretty quickly, and Lane Kiffin, the self-proclaimed transfer god, is that it? He's number 3, right behind LSU in net ratings in the transfer portal, which is interesting. What about South Carolina with all the hype around the quarterback there? I do wonder if Sellers is the truth. They lost a ton of defense to the draft. A little bit on Twitter, some people have been saying that they think the defense coming in is just as good. I'm not so sure about that. It's not like they're Georgia. I'm skeptical with South Carolina too.
Yeah, I mean they had one of the top 5 defense. I mean, I don't care what the stats say. I don't know what the stats were, but to me they had one of the top 5 defenses in the country last year and might have had the best defensive line in the country. And they lose their top 5 tacklers and 6 of their top 7, and that doesn't even include Kyle Kennard, who, if he wasn't first team All-American, he damn sure should have been. He had 11 and a half sacks. He had 15 and a half tackles for loss, 10 QB hurries. Phil Steele's-Mag didn't have forced fumbles. I think he had like 5 or 6 forced fumbles as well. It just caused all kind of problems for opposing offenses. And Nick Emanwari was an all-SEC guy at safety. Now they do have Dylan Stewart, the rising sophomore, who was spectacular as a true freshman and is probably on some preseason All-American teams and some publications. Lenoris Sellers, man, he's got all kinds of potential. Great speed, great size, great arm strength. And, he had a 65.6 completion percentage last year. Now, he would fumble every now and then, which was kind of a bugaboo for him, but he has got all sorts of talent. Now, they're going to miss Rocket Sanders, and I'm not sure. Now, this 4-star transfer from Utah State, Rashul Faison, he is an absolute monster, a total beast, but he's not eligible yet. There's some sort of they're doing some appeal of the NCAA that at last check. Now, I haven't looked into it in the last couple of weeks. They were still waiting to hear back. If they get him eligible, he's not too much of a downgrade from Rocket Sanders, and they'll be okay at running back if they get him eligible and he's able to stay healthy. But yeah, they gave up only 18.1 points per game defensively last year. They're not going to be near that, in my opinion. Their transfer specific class, actually, I never checked that. No, here we go. Yeah, is ranked 15th by the 247 Sports Composite. They've got 18 transfers, 6 are 4-star transfers, 10 from Power 4 programs. So looking at the schedule, I mean, this is kind of like who was that team we were talking earlier that I had tons of swing games for, but I can't remember. But anyway, I think 5-1 was 6 swing games for South Carolina. I've got them losing at LSU.
Auburn had the swing games. Auburn had
it was Auburn. Okay, yeah, thank you. The swing games for South Carolina at Missouri, Oklahoma at home, Alabama at home, where I do lean to them plus 7.5. At Ole Miss, at A&M, South Carolina gets 2 weeks to prepare for that one. And Clemson at home, where they're a 5.5-point underdog. But I'm pretty high on Clemson, but it's at South Carolina, so they can obviously win that one. The FanDuel had their win total 7.5, under -130, over +106. I mean, I think that's a good number. I mean, maybe they win 8. I don't think they win 9 like they did in the regular season last year. I think they're probably a 7-5, 8-4 team.
All right. Well, there you go. 7-5, 8-4. And that's where the number is. It's funny. They're a little bit lower, even though the hype's high on them, which is interesting. It's a number that's hard to trust with the books. Over 7.5 plus 115. It's kind of begging me to take the over there. But man, yeah, they've got a trickier schedule than lots other. Alabama, Clemson being on that schedule throws things off. I think they could beat Clemson. I'm not as high in Clemson as other people are. They do avoid Georgia, which is nice. So you got to give them some credit for that. LSU's a loss. I think they can get to 8 wins, but it's just another wrinkle in the SEC with that team there. And then now you have Tennessee here with Joey Aguilar, coming in from UCLA, and they seem to return a lot of defensive starters on Tennessee. I know they lost a few in their edge rusher there, but man, I think they can possibly reload here at Tennessee.
Yeah, the Vols. Well, I mean, look, I just trust Heupel that they'll be able to, I think they'll be able to score points. Although I'm not, I think it is a downgrade from Nico, and they lose a stud running back in Dylan Sampson, who had 1,491 rushing yards, 22 touchdowns, 5.8 yards per carry average last year. But Deshaun Bishop was a nice change of pace for him. He had 6.1 yards per carry average last year, but they lost their top 3 wide receivers. I've marked Tennessee 7-3 with 2 swing games being I didn't even give them a for sure win against Vandy at home because I think Vandy's got the quarterback advantage in that game. But right now, for conversation purposes, I'll say they win that because I don't think Vandy will be as good in November as injuries kind of take their toll. And then the other swing game would be Oklahoma at home. I've got them 3 losses being at Alabama, at Florida, and Georgia at home. And but they could go 9-3 if they can beat Vandy and Oklahoma at home. They could go 9-3 because I think they're non-conference. They'll take care of business with Syracuse, East Tennessee State, UAB, and New Mexico State.
All right. Well, there you go. Lots of easier wins towards the end. At Kentucky, Oklahoma, New Mexico State, at Florida is tougher than Vanderbilt at home. So, another SEC team wrinkling things up, and you got Oklahoma Sooners there. And the Sooners, John Mateer is slotted in to be their quarterback. You got Michael Hawkins behind him, I believe, unless you know a little bit more about that situation. What's the Sooners looking like? Boomer Sooner looking to kind of, redeem themselves a little bit from just getting smacked up when they got to the SEC.
Yeah, in fairness to Oklahoma, they did lose like their top 5 wide receivers like by early October. I think Brent Venables is probably on the hottest seat in the SEC. I mean, I know Sam Pittman is up there as well, and there's several guys up there, but I think Venables is probably the uno in terms of hot seat. It's definitely going to be Mateer, the Wazoo transfer, who had a 29-7 TDI&T ratio last year and is a dual threat guy who rushed for 800 and 26 yards. And they got a monster late window portal pickup in Jaden Ott at the running back position. But they've got Javante Barnes, their leading rusher last year, back as well. And look, the defense was really good last year. They gave up 21.5 points per game, but I would shave 3 to 6 points off that almost just because the offense was so inept at times. Just in terms of in fairness to that defense, I think they truly represented a defense that probably was only giving up 17 or 18 points a game. Anyhow, they're going to be good on defense. They've got I know they lost Stutzman, their stud linebacker, but they've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've got 9 of their top 11 tacklers back and 8 starters back on defense. So if they hit with Mateer, and they've got some, some guys from the portal, had a pretty good portal class. They invested some money. I marked them. Let's see. I
Six and a
marked
half
them.
wins is what they're at, or 7 if you count the minus 170 on it. So
Right, correct. Let's see, 3-3. I marked them 4-3 with 5 swing games. I've got them losing at South Carolina, to Texas, and at Alabama. I've got their swing games: Michigan at home, where they're actually a 2.5-point favorite at DraftKings; Auburn at home; Ole Miss at home; at Tennessee; and LSU. So now those are swing games initially. Let me just grade them how I think if I have to pick them right now. I will say they beat Michigan at home. I'll say they beat Auburn at home to go to 4-0. I got them 5-0, lose it against Texas, lose to South Carolina 5-2. I'll say they beat Ole Miss at home, but lose at Tennessee. That's 6-3, 6-4 at Alabama. I think they beat Missouri at home 7-4. LSU at home, they're 7-4 with that game pending, and I would probably say LSU wins that, and I think they go 7-5.
all right, 7. I mean, another slightly optimistic team here in the SEC with the Oklahoma. Venables is on the hottest seat out of anybody, in my opinion, too. I agree with that. Yeah, it's probably worse than Pittman. I wonder if Drinkwitz is, Missouri caught fire a year or two ago, but they're kind of fading themselves here. I mean, any improvement for Mississippi State, and you can give me a yes or no answer here, because Levy's got a lot of guys returning on this team, and they were terrible last year, but they did show a little bit of life towards the end of the year, I thought, when they, just kind of kept it, respectable against Ole Miss, losing by 12. And, this team was terrible, but do they take a step forward?
I mean, they were pretty good. ATS certainly catching those big numbers. They easily covered and were very competitive outright at Texas and at Georgia and A&M at home. And yeah, I mean, so they covered some numbers, but no, I've got them going 3-9. But I know we're low on time, so let me give you 2 season win totals of teams we haven't got to. I like under 4.5 on Kentucky. Unless they hit on like all their transfers and Calzada is like really good. I think I mean, they went 4-8 last year and they've lost a ton. I mean, excuse me. Barryon Brown and Dane Key were huge losses to the portal at the wide receiver position. I mean, I've got them 2-9 with 2 swing games, and I like Toledo catching double digits at Kentucky in week 1. That's I even marked that a swing game, although Kentucky probably wins outright. And then I got Tennessee Tech a W, and the swing games or Eastern Michigan and Tennessee Tech W's. Toledo a swing game. Did I have another swing game? No, I got them losing at Vanderbilt. Vandy's got 2 weeks to prepare for them. So anyway, I like it under 4.5. Now Vandy, I like it over 4.5, but there's a lot of juice on that. But over 5.5 is plus 140. I love both of those. I maybe do it half and half amount wise. So Phil Steele's national unit rankings have them 19th at linebacker, number 4 at special teams. You've got Diego Pavia. They won 6 in the regular season last year, and if you think it was a fluke, hey, they were 3-4 in 1 possession games. I mean, Georgia State hit like a 30-yard touchdown pass with like 14 seconds left to beat them 36-32. Vandy missed a potential game winner in regulation and missed a potential tying field goal in double OT and lost 30-27 in double overtime at Missouri. They lost by 3 to Texas, and they lost by 7 at LSU. I mean, they lost 1 possession games they could have won last year. Pavia's back. They've got the best tight end in the country in Eli Stowers. They've got 7 of their top 10 tacklers back, 8 starters back on defense. They gave up 23.4 points per game defensively last year. And I know that's not elite, but Vandy usually gives up between 35 and 38 a game. That's elite defense for Vandy standards. And you look at the schedule, Charleston Southern at home, Georgia State at home, Utah State at home, and Kentucky at home. I think those are 4 wins right there. So
Auburn, Missouri could be wins, man. Auburn, I'm with you. I like the plus 130 with Pavia there in his final season of college football. Yeah, Missouri and Auburn, I will even say they're going to win one of those. I don't think they lose both of those. And at Virginia Tech could be a win. That's very possible. I mean, and then somebody can have a hiccup along the way. There could be an LSU hiccup. There could be a at Virginia or at South Carolina, I should say, hiccup. I see 6 wins here.
Let me give you a few more stats on Hugh Freeze versus Diego Pavia. All right, Pavia is 3-0, both straight up and against the spread. He has beaten the closing line by 124 combined points. New Mexico State at Liberty in 2022, 49-14 Aggies as a 24.5 point underdog. Pavia 16 of 21. 214 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 125 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. In 2023, New Mexico State goes to Auburn as a 26-point dog. They win 31-10. Pavia, 3 touchdowns and no picks. And then last year is a 7.5-point dog. Vandy wins 17-7. Pavia, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So Pavia 3-0. 8 touchdown passes, no interceptions, 3 rushing touchdowns, and the combined score, 2 is a double-digit dog, 1 is a more than a touchdown dog. The final score, 97-31 to Pavia's teams. Diego Pavia is Hugh Freeze's daddy.
You know what? I don't disagree with you. I'm gonna top it off with Arkansas under 5.5 wins. They're trying to bait you into thinking they're going to make a bowl game, but I don't think so. This is a tough schedule here. I see wins against Alabama, A&M, Arkansas State, and probably Mississippi State at home, but the rest of these games at Ole Miss. At Memphis, Memphis will be favored in that game, I think, anyway. Notre Dame at home, but Notre Dame, come on. At Tennessee, A&M, Auburn, at LSU, at Texas, and then Missouri at the end might get you to 4. Yeah,
Notre Dame. Sorry. Well, Notre Dame is minus 12.5 in that game at Arkansas at DraftKings.
That's massive. I think that, like we said before, Pittman is on the hot seat as well, and it's not looking good for this team. They only returned 3 starters on defense. Not like they're getting all those names in the transfer portal, like you'd think so. Arkansas. I'm going to find out where they rank real quick in the net. They rank 57th. In the transfer portal on 3 net rankings. That means they lost 6 4-stars and they gained back 1 4-star out of that. And the 3 stars were kind of a wash. So I'm taking Arkansas under. I know at DraftKings it is at a decent number, 5.5 minus 130. So that's my play for this show. I think I'm going to fade Arkansas, and Sam Pittman will be faded as well. So, yeah, I see him losing his job as well.
Watch for them to make a run at SMU's Rhett Lashley. He's an Arkansas guy.
That's a great call. Rhett Lashley could be the next guy. And real quick,
I don't know if he'll leave. It's easier to win in the ACC. I mean, I don't know if he'll leave SMU, especially if they're shelling out NIL bucks like they were in the Pony Express days, and I don't know the answer to that if they are.
I thought those days should have been over, but maybe they come back. Let's talk real quick. I think you mentioned before we got on that you might have something for the non-conferences, other conferences, I should say, not the SEC. What do you like?
Yeah, I like Illinois over 7.5. I know it's heavily juiced the over, but I looked like a week ago it was only minus 135 at Circa. So they win 9 in the regular season last year, and they've got 16 of 22 starters coming back. Luke Altmaier was outstanding last year, 22-6 TDI and T ratio. They've got their entire offensive line coming back, and the schedule, it really works. Western Illinois and Western Michigan at home. I think that's 2-0. They've got Rutgers at home. I think that's a third win. Maryland at home and Northwestern at home. I think that's 5. I think USC will be a tightly lined game at home, but I would slightly lean Illinois there. So that's, I think, can be a 6th home win. I think they're going to win at Purdue. That could get them to 7. I think at Washington's a toss-up, but Illinois' got 2 weeks to prepare for that one. And let's see who Washington plays the week before. I think they're on the East Coast. They're at Michigan. So, I think they could win possibly at Washington, and they get at Wisconsin as well, and which is a possible win. I'm not saying they're going to beat your alma mater.
Oh, it's. I mean, I would bet them at Pick'em. Wisconsin right now is looking very rough, and I'm going to get to a Big Ten preview, but look at it this way: Luke Fickell, when he was good at Tennessee, Cincinnati, his defensive coordinator was Marcus Freeman, the coach of Notre Dame in 2020, and Mike Denbrock was his offensive coordinator for those 2 years, and he's the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So maybe it wasn't Fickell as much as it was the other guys there.
And look, at Duke and at Indiana, those are hard games, but they're winnable games as well. I mean, I don't. The only game that I say is a definite loss for Illinois is Ohio State at home. That's the only one that I'll say definitively. But didn't they beat Ohio State at home as like a 30-point underdog about 8 or 9 years ago, didn't they?
Illinois, Purdue did. I remember. I don't know if Illinois did.
I think Illinois did as well. But anyway, I think Illinois is going to have a big year. And so let me ask you this: Fickell, his seat's got to be hot, right?
I would assume it's hot, but at the same time, there's a certain smugness that comes down from McIntosh, the athletic director there, and people have been calling for Greg Gard's head for a long time too. And there's never discussion of that. As a matter of fact, he gets raises, and Gard gives you hope, and then at the end he blows it. It's just really weird. Like, his teams have been very motivated yet not talented yet, and obviously that's basketball. But you look into football, I would assume so. But here's the problem. They lost a ton of transfers. There were some court cases going on, and Wisconsin got punished too for some misappropriation of phone calls. And there's some bad stuff that happened. They tried to keep a kid and accuse the other team of tampering, and that was Miami, and they stole one of the cornerbacks there. It's just been ugly. And then Wisconsin coming in with this brutal schedule at Alabama. They might go 3-9 this year. I mean, because their schedule's that hard. I mean, seriously. Wow. I mean, here's their wins. Well, here's their wins. Their wins is Miami of Ohio, maybe their first game. They better freaking win that game. Middle Tennessee and Maryland at home. Here's the rest of their games: at Alabama, at Michigan, Iowa at home, who's better than them, Ohio State at home, who's going to smoke them, Oregon at Washington, who's probably a loss. Then you have at Illinois, probably a loss. You have, Illinois is at home, I should say.
At Indiana.
I meant to say at Indiana and at Minnesota. And Minnesota smoked us last year. I don't know what. Maybe this Edwards kid that we got from Maryland, who I thought was actually okay. The problem with Wisconsin is everybody hates him. So it's like, are you going to join the masses and just jump on the bandwagon here? That when everybody's against something, it makes you want to look the other way. But I can't bet on them, man. I think that they're in some serious trouble because of that schedule. So the truth is, do you give Fickell an extra year just because of this brutal schedule? I probably say no, but now he has a new offensive coordinator. They got rid of Longo, and Longo wasn't a fit there. Now they're going to go back to running the football. I don't expect it to be fixed this year. It's ugly, man. I would only bet under 5.5.
I thought Fickell was a great hire, but it's been a monumental disappointment.
It's been a huge disappointment, and fans are concerned. And I mean, this is not the schedule that you need to try to take a step forward. It's a brutal schedule for Wisconsin. I would almost argue from a strength perspective, because you can say that, Florida's got the hardest schedule, but Wisconsin's a touchdown not as worse than Florida. So it's almost like the distance between the teams they're playing is a lot more than the distance between what Florida's playing. So I feel like Wisconsin does have the hardest schedule, in my opinion, and and it's going to prove probably coming mid-season, and you're going to be like, well, Jesus, I hope you won't be stuck with an overticking on them. And but we'll get into the Big Ten though, and I do like your Illinois, because Bielema is a guy that's going to want to beat Wisconsin for being there before, and he's got a good team. He's Bielema's grown up since the Arkansas days, right? He's grown up a bit.
Yeah. I think he has certainly whatever negativity there might have been because it didn't really work out at Arkansas. I think he has resurrected his integrity or whatever
Right.
at Illinois. And look, man, any grown man who outkicks his coverage by meeting his hot wife at the blackjack tables in Las Vegas is a guy that I like. That's what Bielema did.
That's what Bielema did. He's probably met quite a few of them.
He met his wife. He met his wife at the blackjack table in Vegas, and she is a smoke show.
Well, she is, and we'll see what happens with Illinois. But Brian, hopefully your picks are a smoke show, because you gave us a ton of them for this awesome show. I appreciate it, you coming on and making the show great. Where could our listeners and viewers get your wonderful information in place?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Vegas B Edwards, and you can get my content on Major Wager, where I've got an article on the homepage there about Vanderbilt and the win total plays that I discussed on this show. I also have a podcast that usually comes out on Fridays on the Southeastern 16 YouTube channel. It's called Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greason. So if you want to go to the Southeastern 16 YouTube channel and subscribe, that'd be great. Or I'll send out the links on my Twitter. And there you go, my man.
Awesome
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely did as well. Make sure you guys check out Brian in the Southeastern 16 on his new show on YouTube.